Welcome, foolish mortals. I'm going to be honest, this is my second crack at this one. I made some mistakes last time, little stutters and stuff, and so I'm going to try and take another shot at this one, but I think you're going to understand. I do. I think you guys are understanding folks, my friends, family, loved ones, and let's be real, everybody who watches this is one of those three things. I think you guys are going to understand because this gets complicated, guys. I mean, like, really complicated, because we're talking about one guy with a lot of aliases, and then of course we will talk about another character with just one alias, or just one name, one identity. There, that's what I meant. Okay, right. So are you sitting comfortably? Kind of shimmy on into your seat. Sorry, Bailey. And get all comfortable, because this one is a doozy. This week's villain profile, in fitting with our spooky fall theme, is the Haunted Mansion's very own Captain Blood. Nikki, who's Captain Blood? Captain Blood is based on Ken Anderson's original story for Haunted Mansion, which included a captain named Captain Gore. He was translated over to Captain Blood in the Haunted Mansion comics. So now we've got Captain Blood and Captain Gore, same guy. You with me still? Okay, because it gets worse. Okay. So Captain Gore / Blood was the pirate name of a guy who later moved to the Hudson River Valley and decided to live in his own mansion. This guy is the familiar face or voice of William Gracey, who, after leaving his nefarious pirate ways behind him, settled in, met a woman named Emily DeClaire, and decided to marry her. The day of their wedding, however, she is approached by all of Gracey's former pirate crew, who literally frighten her to death. Out of sorrow, within the next 3 years, when he is unable to recover from this tragedy, Gracey does hang himself. This means that he's also the ghost host who tells you he hung himself at the beginning of the attractions. That's 4 that are one guy. Keep hanging on, because there are more pirate names here. I wrote a list. I made a list, guys, because there's a lot of names that this character has. Brace yourselves, here it comes. He is William Gracey, Edward Gracey, Captain Blood, Captain Gore, the Ghost Host, Bartholomew Roberts, which makes me think of the Dread Pirate Roberts, but apparently not a connection. Bartholomew Gore, the Captain, the Mariner, Gideon Gore Lou, and then where's the other one? Here we are. Culpepper Cline was another one. All of these names probably sound somewhat familiar because they're referenced in different places in the mansion. For example, Culpepper Cline is the pirate or mariner that has the crypt there in the cemetery, where he's sitting in a bathtub or in this kind of brine stuff, and gross stuff comes flying out of it, and you can hear him kind of singing an old sailor shanty. So that's one of his identities. Now, Bartholomew Roberts was supposed to be a pirate that featured heavily in Pirates of the Caribbean, and then that being an alter ego of William Gracey would be what tied the Pirates of the Caribbean with the Haunted Mansion during the original planning of the parks. This is complicated enough for you yet? Then, of course, there is Bartholomew Gore, which is a combination of Bartholomew Blood and Captain Gore mixed together, and he also has a grave at the Haunted Mansion, as does Master Gracey. This is complex stuff. So, another alternative of the story is that the captain himself had a lobster claw for one of his arms and would decapitate people who displeased him. This might sound familiar because it's a key plot to Davy Jones in Pirates of the Caribbean, again, tying the two attractions together. Whew! This is heavy lifting, guys. Like, my brain, I've been working on this all week. My brain. Okay. Because every time you look up one character, it leads you to another and another and another, and it gets crazy complicated. So, what's next? Okay. So, yeah. So, Emily dies. There's another version of the story, though, because with the Haunted Mansion, there's always another version of the story. This is part of what keeps us as guests coming back over and over and over, because we want to see if we can figure out which version is the correct version. Well, Emily also is rumored to have been up in the attic checking out different things for her wedding with the kind of that local hat accessory jewelry salesman. And so, they're prepping, getting all her accessories, getting her glam on, and Mr. Gracey comes upstairs and presumes that they're having some kind of adulterous affair and kills them both. This makes the accessory man the Hatbox Ghost. Yeah, it all ties together. Now, Emily is not the infamous bride, though, that you see in the attic of the Haunted Mansion, because Emily was not an evil bride. By all accounts, Emily was a pretty nice girl. And, so even with the adulterous affair story, she was not actually having an adulterous affair. And so, by all accounts, Emily is not the bride that kills you at the end of Haunted Mansion. That is another bride, because of course it is. But, yeah, so this goes into I think that bride is tied into the Bloodmere family rather than the Gracey family. But most stories of the Haunted Mansion are tied into, of course, the William Gracey family. So, the real question is, if Bartholomew Cline, Master Gracey, and Bartholomew Gore Culpepper Cline, Bartholomew Gore. See what this is doing to me, guys? See what this is doing? So many names for one guy. Well, if they all are different identities of the same fellow, why do they have 3 separate graves? My fan theory, and this is not official Disney business, this is my fan theory because I love fan theories. I feed off fan theories, and so it's about time I made one of my own. My theory is that when Master Gracey moved to the Hudson River Valley, or New Orleans if you're a Disneylander, to get away from his life as a pirate and his history of violence and betrayal and whatever led to his ghost crew hating him so much that they killed his bride, when he got away from all of that, my theory is that he kind of buried his old identities in order to no longer be associated with that life. And by buried, I mean his treasure. I think that his pirate treasure is in those graves, because if you move somewhere new and you buy a giant mansion and you're getting engaged, you're going to start a family, you don't want to leave all that pirate treasure behind. You might need that. That's his retirement plan, guys. He didn't know when he buried that he was going to hang himself in a couple of years. So I think Captain Blood, Gore, Culpepper, Cline's treasure, oh gosh, that's a mouthful, is buried in those 2 graves, the Bartholomew Gore and the Culpepper Cline graves. And then that would make his Master Gracey, no mourning please at his request, grave the actual Master Gracey grave. That's my theory. As to whether or not he killed Emily or she was killed by his pirate crew, I have no idea. The Haunted Mansion doesn't answer these questions. Disney never answers any of these questions. That's why I'm so addicted to them, because I always wonder. I wonder and wonder and wonder forever, because they're fascinating. It's fascinating. Like, you don't have to be a true crime junkie to be totally into this, because they never give you the answers. You're always looking for them. It's very sneaky, and I love it. But there is, of course, another side to every story. And that's why I'm featuring 2 villains today, because their stories are very intimately connected. And I'm talking, of course, about one of the most famous ghosts of the Haunted Mansion. I'm talking about Madam Leota herself. It says that she's in regions beyond now having a ball, but I don't know that she is, because I think to her eternity is just another day at work. And here's why. Leota was a refugee, in a sense. She escaped from the Salem witch trials and moved away from Massachusetts up to the Hudson River Valley, again, or New Orleans, respectively. I'm a Disney Worlder, so Hudson River Valley, but New Orleans, well, we'll get to that, because there might be a stronger case for New Orleans. But anyway, she gets away from the Salem witch trials and offers her medium services, not large services, just medium services, to Master Gracey to help purify his house of ghosts. And so, he accepts, and she's going through, and they eventually become very close friends, and eventually she falls in love with Master Gracey. He does not reciprocate, and feeling scorned by this, hell hath no fury, and so she just unleashes the ghosts of his past crew, who are really, really mad at him. Mad enough to kill his wife. And we don't know why. Again, we don't know all the details of Gracey's past, just that he was a pirate. So, whatever he did, his crew comes back and kills Emily. when Gracey finds out that this is how things went down with Madam Leota, he strangles her. And he doesn't just do it willy-nilly. He does it in the middle of a seance. So she's working away and ends up passing away because of all of the magical, energy floating around. She ends up trapped in her own crystal ball. And she doesn't know she's dead. That's why when you're on the ride, she summons ghoulies and ghosties and stuff like that, which seems like pretty disrespectful terms for a ghost if you are one. She doesn't know she is. She thinks that she's just in a very, very deep trance. Of course, all of this murder happening during the seance and during her being in a trance unleashed some kind of door to the ghost world, and that's why this one house has 999 spirits, because by killing her during the seance, he left the door wide open, because she wasn't alive to close it behind her. So that's why the Haunted Mansion has so many ghosts for one house. And so, Madam Leota has a somewhat sad story. She is one of the only specific ghosts that if you go on the Haunted Mansion that has her own room in the Haunted Mansion. But Nikki, I've ridden that ride a million times and I've never seen Madam Leota's room. I've seen her seance room, but I've never seen her have a bedroom in the house. That's because, my friend, you've ridden the ride a million times. You haven't chickened out, wussed out, and left on the chicken exit. Because you can only see the different little tabs that say which rooms there are when you go through the chicken exit. The chicken exit takes you through the servants' quarters. And so as you go through the servants' quarters, you can see, kind of think Downton Abbey, how they have a bell that attaches to every single individual room so that when somebody in that room calls the servants, they know which room has been rung from. One of those rooms is Madame Leota's boudoir. So she became so close with Mr. Gracey that even though she has her little house just like not even a block away, and it's now Memento Mori, which is where most of this history comes from, she also has her own room in the house. So I can see kind of where she was getting the idea that maybe they were kind of romantically linked, because if he's going to let her have her own room in that house, even though she lives like 15 steps away, there's something special there. Sorry about that. Pause for a minute. Oliver was eating one of my shoes, and I need my shoes. It's important. I use them to walk. So, anyway, she was, pretty regular guest at the house. If she has her own bedroom there, I can see why she'd assume that she's practically one of the family. In fact, her own gravestone says in the cemetery that she's beloved Leota. So even after her death, even if Gracey was the one who strangled her, she's still very close to the family, close enough to have been buried in their own personal cemetery. The reason why I say that, aside from just Disneyland being the first Haunted Mansion attraction, that this may have been her escaping to New Orleans rather than the Hudson River Valley, is because you actually see her tombstone in New Orleans at the climax of The Princess and the Frog. There's Madame Leota's tombstone in the cemetery when Tiana is fighting the Shadow Man. And so that makes a strong case, too, that she escaped to New Orleans rather than the Hudson River Valley that you see in the Haunted Mansion in Disney World. Who knows? Kind of a side note, I have a merch suggestion for Disney. Not that any of them are listening to this, but if you are, Disney, you need to make that newspaper clipping of Madame Leota's ad into a t-shirt. It reads, Madame Leota knows and sees all. Spirits and phantoms will answer her call. And it says that she's a medium, fortune teller, seances on request, that kind of thing. It needs to be a t-shirt. It has like a spooky eye in the middle of it. I would wear the heck out of that t-shirt, buy another one, and wear the heck out of that one. I love it. It's kind of creepy. It's got that old faded newspaper print to it, feel kind of like all yellowed and stuff, and I just love it. You can find it in Memento Mori, framed on the wall, along with a framed picture of what Madame Leota looked like when she was alive. So that kind of wraps up my summary of Captain Blood, Gore, Gracey, and Madame Leota. So complicated, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface, but again, I think that's deliberate. I think there are no actual answers to these questions in this particular Disney lore. I think it's left open on purpose so that you keep digging for treasure you're never going to find, because it's in the Captain Culpepper grave. Just saying. I think it's there. But anyway, thank you for tuning in today, and I hope you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed doing the research. So the Haunted Mansion is absolutely my favorite attraction at all of Disney World. When I was little, I wanted to live in that house. I thought it was the most beautiful house in the world, and it was really a pleasure to get to spend my time kind of unloading some more of the history regarding this particular attraction, and I had such a blast. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and have a wonderful weekend.